Hey everybody, this is Gregory from Dapp University. So welcome back to this multi-part tutorial where I'm showing you how to code your own cryptocurrency and build your own ICO website. And today we're going to continue building out the client-side portion of our decentralized application. This is going to be our token sale website. So be sure to check out the previous video where I set up your development environment for client-side development. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can see the next videos in this tutorial when they come out. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into building out our front end. So we'll go back to our project. We'll resume where we left off. Again, there's code down in the description below. There's a link to GitHub if you just want to pick up at this point in the tutorial. So what we want to do is kind of sketch out some HTML, and then we'll wire it up with JavaScript. So I'm going to enter the body tag here. We'll clear this out. Actually, let's do a couple things. Sorry. A few preliminary tasks. Let's make sure that we have Ganache running. So Ganache is running. And if you're picking up at this point in the tutorial, make sure that you run npm install to install your dependencies. I'm going to skip that step because I've already done that. But yeah, so what we want to do is, actually, let's also ensure that our project is working. We go to npm run dev. Okay, we have our token sale kind of placeholder here. All right. So let's sketch out some of this HTML. First, what I want is to kind of create just a big container. This is a bootstrap element. So I'm going to do div.container. And I'm going to give this a width, actually. So I don't really want to write any extra CSS. I'm just going to do this inline. It's not necessarily best practice, but let's get us started. Oops. Do a row, and we'll give us a full width column here. Okay, and if some of this looks magic to you, I'm choosing tab completion in Sublime Text. I basically can type the element that I want, and type the class, my class, and hit tab, and it will give me that for free. So also these classes, are things that just reference special elements that we get for free from Bootstrap. We saw that in the previous video about how we wired up Bootstrap. Bootstrap has all these components that you can just pull in by assigning classes to your DOM elements. That's what we're doing here. So we will do h1 like we said a minute ago, and we'll give us let's give us a class. Center this, and we'll say Dapp token ICO sale. All right. Let's start our project again, and I'll just leave this running this time. Okay, that gives us a nice header here. We'll go back to a project. And we'll give us some space with a horizontal rule and a break. Oops. Can be correct here. All right, let's go ahead and just sketch out some content. So we'll do div, we'll give us an ID. And then we'll also give us a class. And we'll say, introducing Dapp token. Sorry. And we'll break this. We'll say token price is, let's say span token price. And we'll leave this blank for now. We'll actually wire this up with JavaScript, ether. And we'll say you currently have all right, we give us another span. We'll fill in these values with JavaScript. They're going to be blank first in our template. And then we'll give us a non-breaking space. Capitalize this. Take a look. All right, so we can see our text that we've created here. Now let's get a visual reference for like what we're actually building, right? So sorry if this has been abstract without seeing what we're going for. This is the kind of final project that's on the Rinkeby test network. So we're going to build this whole thing out, right? This is our client-side application. Minus this, I don't think I'm going to add the little announcement. You can do that yourself if you'd like as an extra exercise. But yeah, we're going to create this layout. We're going to create a form to buy the tokens. We're going to show how many tokens have been sold, how many there are total, and we'll show the account that we are connected to the network with. So far this is what we got. And next I'm going to basically break here. We'll add our form. This is the form that we saw here. And we'll do it like this. Say form. I believe Bootstrap requires this. We won't add an action because we'll just wire this up to JavaScript. But I think Bootstrap requires us to say role form. All right, so we'll do a div. This is sort of my special recipe for creating this inline form like this with the buttons here. We'll do this form group. And we'll say input group. All right. And then we'll do input. The ID equals number of tokens. Oops, sorry. Yeah, and this input type is actually going to be a number. And we'll say, let's actually just format this like so. Put the ID first. Type here. We'll do name, number. We'll do value equals 1. This will be the initial value that the form is initialized with. And we'll give it a minimum value as well because we don't want anyone to buy less than 1 token. And we'll also give it a pattern. This is pretty neat. We can kind of add basically an HTML validation here. That we only want, integers from 0 to 9 in this form. And this is really because we don't want to really support fractional tokens at this point. We only want you to allow you to buy, 1 Dapp token or 5 Dapp tokens or 100 Dapp tokens. We don't want to support, fractional tokens like 1.5 or 1.2. And that's just for the sake of this tutorial. So we'll save that. Let's add some styles to this as well. Add a class here. Say this is form control. We'll say input LG. All right, I think that'll work. Oops. Okay, then we'll add a span. Actually, let's do this. Span, I think this is input, a group button. This is going to be the submit button. Button, this will be type submit. Class is going to be button primary, and button large. We'll say buy tokens. All right. We'll see what that does. I may need to add some more styles to this, but let's see. Oh, this is the nope. Yep, that's it. Yep, that's the same as the. It's a little wider, but that's the same as the other website. Okay, so that's the beginnings of our form. We can see our inline form here. We know it's initialized to 1. We don't want to say 0. If we try to submit that, it's going to scream at us. Value must be greater than or equal to 1. If we do 1.5, it's going to say, it's an invalid value. So let's refresh that. 0. Right, it doesn't work. Okay, so we got our form on the page. And we want to, let's see what else we want to add. I forgot we got this loader. This is not a loader, like a progress bar. It's kind of showing how many tokens have been sold. This is pretty small because only this many out of the total supply have been sold. But we'll add it anyway. Let's add progress. So once we're done with the form, we'll just minimize this. We'll say, we'll break here, and we'll say div.progress. And div ID progress. And we'll give it some classes as well. Class, this is their bootstrap specific. Bar, progress, bar, striped, and active. And we need to give it a minimum and a maximum value. Let's see here. Value min equals 0. Value max equals 100. Okay, let's just save that for now. See where we're at. All right, so we have our loader. Let's just see if we can kind of tell it that the minimum value is like 50 or something. We'll actually see that when we wire it up. Let's just leave it at 0 for now. We'll actually talk to this in JavaScript and tell it, how far of progress it is. So let's also add a place for our showing the tokens sold. This will be P. And we'll say span tokens sold. We'll leave it blank for now. We'll do a slash span tokens available. So the idea is that we want to create, something that says this many tokens out of this total supply have been sold. So we'll create the skeleton for that here. Typo. Let's see. PHP tokens sold. All right. So like I said, this is blank. We'll wire this up in a minute, but we're just giving ourselves a skeleton. And next, let's add another div. Well, let's actually do this. HR. And we'll add a place for the account address that we're connected to the network with. So P, do account address. We'll leave that blank for now. Shouldn't see any changes, but let's make sure we didn't break anything. Well, we saw our horizontal rule tag, so that's good. But we won't see an account address yet because we haven't wired this up. Okay, and I also want to add a loader because we're going to load a lot of this content asynchronously on the page, and we'll show this loader now, but we want to show hide it whenever we wire up the JavaScript. So above all of our content, I'm going to add div loader, and this will just have a paragraph tag. So just say loading. I'll save this. So the idea is, we're going to have to load this page, asynchronously with data from the blockchain with a kind of giant render method. And while it's loading, we want to show this loader and hide all of this. But once it's rendered, we want to hide the loader and show the content. And that's why I've created both of these things on the page for now. So let's go to the page and we can see loading here. Now we won't want to see all of this at the same time whenever we build this out, but this gets us started. Gives us all the content that we need on our page. So I'll save that. All right, that's a good start. We've got all of our HTML laid out that we need. Now let's try wiring it up. We'll go to our app.js file and we can pull this out. Let's actually create an app for us to use. We'll do that like this. App is just equal to this big object. And we'll create an init function. And we'll just say console log app initialized. All right. And below this, we can, initialize our app whenever this file loads. We do that like this. This is pretty common pattern for, whenever our file loads. This is how we boot our app a lot, and many apps that use jQuery like this. It's window.load. Function app.init. So essentially what we're just saying is whenever the window loads, we want to initialize our app. So if this initializes correctly, we should see this logged in the console, app initialized. Go back to our page and check our console. The app was initialized properly. All right. So let's go back to our app. And the first thing that we want to do is kind of wire up this app in order to talk to the blockchain so that we can start filling in some of the values on the page, right? So let's do this. Let's instantiate Web3. Now remember, Web3 is going to be the JavaScript library that we use to get our front-end client to talk to the blockchain, right? It's going to basically allow our app to communicate to the blockchain when it's deployed to a web server or on our local machine. So there's Web3, I mean, there's a pretty standard configuration that looks like this. And we'll basically use this pattern. You don't necessarily have to understand everything that's going on here. That's okay in order to be able to use it. I think this is a case where you don't have to understand how the car works in order to drive it. So we'll just do a basic configuration that looks like this. This is the suggested pattern from GitHub. And sorry. You can check this out on the Ethereum organization. This is the Web3 project. You can read more about this if you'd like. So I'm just going to say init web3. This will be a function. We want to call this whenever our app is loaded, because we want to initialize our app so that it can talk to the blockchain. And I'm just going to paste in some code here that looks a lot like the code we just saw from GitHub. All right, so let's kind of step through this and talk about what it is. So essentially, Web3 is going to depend on an HTTP provider, and that's going to be provided by MetaMask. Right, so MetaMask is something we installed in the dependencies for this project, and MetaMask is going to be the browser extension that turns our modern web browser into a blockchain browser, because most browsers by default won't talk to the blockchain, and we need an extension like MetaMask in order to do that. And hopefully you installed that from the dependencies portion of the first couple of videos. So what we want to do is get MetaMask to essentially talk to Web3. And MetaMask is going to inject an HTTP provider into our browser. that allows our browser to talk to our client-side application, which talks to the blockchain. So we basically want to wire up MetaMask to Web3. And we do that with the current provider that MetaMask injects. So we do that here. So essentially, if the Web3 provider is already provided by MetaMask, we want to just set this to the app.web3 provider. So you keep track of that here. Web3 provider. Start off null. And we'll assign this to a new Web3 object like this. And if it's not, we want to basically just default to the local HTTP provider, which is the same host and port as Ganache. See that here? It's the same location, 7545. So don't get too tripped up if you don't understand this configuration. This is really just based off what Web3 tells you to do on GitHub, and this is how it's adapted for our project. So you feel free to copy the code in the description below if you get stuck. All right, so let's actually do that here. We'll say return app.init web3. All right, let's refresh this and see if it works. All right, we see our console logging statement and no errors, so that's a good start. Okay, so now that Web3 is initialized, we can do a little more. Next we want to do is initialize our smart contracts that we can, wire up our app. So the next thing we'll do is add a function for that. We'll say init contracts. All right. Now, what we want to do is get the contract abstractions from this directory here. This is our build contracts directory, and this gives us, a JSON representation of our smart contract with an ABI, which is an abstract binary interface that describes how the contract works, all the functions and things like that. It's provided, for the Ethereum virtual machine to allow the contract to be encoded and decoded. And Truffle contract is the library that we'll use to interpret these. And we'll see it knows about the address of our contracts, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we're going to read out one of these files. And we can do this with get.json. And we can read one of these files out of this directory like so. We'll say function. Okay. And let me tell you why this works. So why am I not saying, build contracts, right? Because browser sync, the dependency that comes with Light Server, we configured this build, contracts directory to be exposed to the root of our project. So, everything from source and everything from build contracts is being combined together with Light Server and, browser sync in order to, build our project. So we can actually reference our contract abstractions just from the root here. All right. So now we want to say, we want to actually assign this. So let's keep track of our contracts here. Okay. We can say, app.contracts, Dapp token sale is equal to, here's where we're going to use a truffle contract. And remember, we pulled the truffle contract in, the dependencies. So truffle contract is going to give us a lot of nice functionality that allows us to read our contracts and interact with them. And you can interact with smart contracts directly with Web3, but there's a lot of nice things that you get for free with Truffle. For one, it plays nicely with the entire Truffle framework. So for example, whenever we, initialize this contract with one of these JSON files, we get something, it knows how to read this file natively. If you're going to use Web3 by itself, you might have to use this ABI by itself, but Truffle contract understands this entire JSON file. And it's also going to be really nice later when we decide to deploy this project to a different network, because Truffle contract knows how to read these different networks so that we can know the address depending on where we decide to deploy our smart contract, and we don't have to keep copy and pasting values or using some sort of environment variables. This handles it all for us out of the box with this JSON file. So it knows how to do all that. And, we're going to create, an abstraction that's going to allow us to essentially interact with this Dapp token sale contract with Truffle contract in a very simple and streamlined way. So we'll say app.contracts, Dapp token sale set provider. This will be the app.web3 provider. This is what we, set here. And we'll do app. Let's get a deployed instance of this contract just to see if it works. Deployed. This is a lot like our tests. You can see this pattern a lot. Let's say Dapp token sale, and we'll just console log this for now. Dapp token sale address. Say Dapp token sale address. Okay. All right, let's see if this worked. Let's go to our project. All right, and it has not worked, and I'll tell you why. Because we have not connected to our local network with MetaMask. So I'm trying to essentially get our contract and connect to it with this address that Web3 knows about. But first we must actually set up MetaMask. We can do that like this. So make sure you install MetaMask from the the dependencies portion of the tutorial. And let's actually import an account from Ganache. Well, actually, first, let's change the network. See, I'm connected to the Rinkeby test network because I wanted to look at our mock-up here. But let's actually connect to our local network. We can do that by saying custom RPC, because we are connected to port 7545 with Ganache, which is the port we want to connect to. So we'll just copy that. Sorry, MetaMask is not working. So we'll, 8545 is a default port that a lot of people use for development, but we're going to use 7545 since that's what Ganache is running on. So, we selected custom RPC, and let's enter the URL. Click save. All right. So we are connected to that network. Now let's change networks just to clear this out. All right. Now let's import one of our accounts from Ganache. We do that like this. Go to account and import account, and we can select a private key. That's how we will import this account. Now, don't use a private key from one of your accounts from the main network. That would be bad. So if you didn't catch that, I'm in Ganache. I'm going to click just the first account for now. We'll import a couple, but yeah, we'll take this one first. We'll go to the show keys. So we'll select the private key, copy that. Sorry. Import account, private key, paste it there, import. All right, so this is an account that's connected to our private network. Let's refresh. All right, still not working. I believe that's because we haven't actually called init contracts. We'll do that here. App.init contracts. All right, let's save that. All right, so we can see that the contract was initialized, and here's the address. So boom, that's a good test. Our client-side application is actually talking to the blockchain. It's talking to Ganache. It got, you know, this smart contract Dapp token sale, which is what we wanted, and it got the address. It actually was able to connect to it, which is really nice. All right. So let's do the same thing for our token contract, because we need both smart contracts in order to develop this client-side application. We need our token sale contract that we built, and we also need the token contract as well. So we want to do this with a promise chain. So whenever this is done, we want to also get our Dapp token. So we'll copy this just like we did. Say Dapp token, Dapp token.json, and we'll basically do the same thing that we did up here. Let's do this. Let's actually just copy all this. Okay. Close that out. All right, and this will be, let's change all the sales to just token. I think that'll work. Then we'll, all right. So basically we just, you know, set up Dapp token just like we did the token sale. It's pretty standard. Let's save this, go back to our browser. All right, we got a little problem here. So app.contracts.dapptokensale that deployed then done is not a function. Okay, let's just see what our issue is here. See, it's because I just changed this too early. So what we want to do is actually, we want to do this whenever the get JSON is finished. So we'll do that like this. Sorry, guys. And that means we have too much here. All right, there we go. There's a token sale address, and there's the token address. So we've got both of these contracts in our app, and that means our, our app is talking successfully to the blockchain, which is what we want. So that's pretty good progress. So let's try to wire up part of this project to the client side. Whenever we want to lay out our client side, we will basically create a render function in our app that's going to actually, just show everything on the page. So we'll do that like this. This will be a function as well. And let's just show an account. So we can get access to the account that we are connected to like this with the Web3. ETH.get Coinbase. This will be the error. This is a callback function that is accepted by this function. And we'll say, if there's no error, then we'll say app.account. account. And we will actually wire up the account. We'll say your account. And we'll add account here. I'll show you what I'm doing. Well, first let's add a default value to the app. We'll say 0x0. And actually we need to do this in a string. Let's, yeah, it works. So what we're doing here is we're querying for the account address on the DOM. This is here. And we're trying to wire this up. So let's check that out. This is, add a comment here. This will be, we'll just call this, you know, load account data. Let's check our browser. All right, nothing yet. Let's see what the issue is. I believe that's because we haven't actually called render yet. So let's call render after we initialize our contracts. So we first want to get, you know, we want to ensure that all our contracts are loaded. So we'll do that like this. We will wait for this to be done. And then we will, you know, wait for this to be done. We'll say app, return app.render. Let's try that. All right, still nothing. Let's try to just log the address, see if there's anything lost in translation. So let's just try this. So log count. All right, so our account is logged, so I bet there's just an issue with querying the DOM. So app account is equal to account, and account address. Let's see if we actually defined that correctly. Account address, let's just copy that. All right, let's just try to save again and reload. All right, boom, there it is. Yeah, we can see the account has been listed on the page. Let's give ourselves some space here. Yeah, there we go. All right, so we have successfully wired up our account on the page. So now we know our front-end application is talking to the blockchain. We've got, we've got a token sale website, a basic one that's got some of these values filled in with our app.js file. And I think that's where I'm going to cut it off for today, guys. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can see the next video when it comes out. In the next video, we'll probably, wire up the rest of this website where you can, see all of the values wired up here. And we'll try to wire up this form and show this progress bar, etc., etc. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to see that video. And until then, thanks for watching Dapp University.